What's up, Oshawott organization and fellow Pokemon fanatics? Ozzymon here, and back at it again. This time with a very special video. Pokémon Sleep is officially 1 year old, and I've been playing this game for an entire year. So I thought I would make a video reviewing the game, as well as giving my thoughts and opinions about it. I want to discuss about the things that the game does well, while also discussing about the things where the game is lacking and could see improvement. Truthfully speaking, I have genuinely enjoyed my time playing Pokémon Sleep throughout the year it's been out. But the game isn't perfect. It definitely has its flaws, and I want to discuss about all I have to say about the game. With all of that being said, let's get this video started. First, let's talk about my background. I am a free-to-play Pokémon Sleep player, as in I haven't spent a single dollar on this game. I definitely would consider myself to be more of a casual player, as in I don't rely on guides, videos, or other online resources to learn how to play the game. Everything I learned about the game is from my own experiences playing it. So, in a way, you could say, because of that, I may not end up making the best decisions possible that would be the most beneficial to me in my account. I'm definitely not efficient when it comes to this game, but I could care less. I just play Pokémon Sleep for the sake of playing it. So I take my sweet time when it comes to my experience with Pokémon Sleep. I just play this game in hopes of completing as many achievements as possible, befriending as many Pokémon as I can, and trying to encounter as many sleep styles as possible for the sleep decks. I enjoy this game because it's Pokémon, and because it is vastly different from the typical mainline formula. Truthfully speaking, I wouldn't really consider Pokémon Sleep to be a game necessarily, as when it comes to the core gameplay of Pokémon Sleep, well, it's just that, sleeping. It honestly feels more like a simulator than a game, which is technically a type of game, I know that, but you get my point. Truthfully speaking, aside from just sleeping, there's not really much to interact with. Aside from just tapping on your Pokemon and looking throughout the countless menus, there's really not much to it. But I would argue, at the same time, there are a lot of things that add to the simple gameplay, like the countless items that provide all kinds of different perks and benefits, a variety of Pokemon main/sub skills, along with their natures that also provide buffs and debuffs, countless achievements to try and go out to complete, as well as multiple collectibles to find, and so much more. All of this adds this extra layer of depth to what one may think is simply just a game where you sleep to catch Pokemon, when in all reality, it isn't that simple. Now let's finally talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to Pokémon Sleep. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Pokémon Go++. I feel like the Pokémon Go Plus Plus is the best way to experience this game. I'd rather not have to keep my phone for the entire 8 hours while I sleep, literally putting me at risk of a fire hazard. And besides, overcharging your phone is never really a good idea. And besides, the Pokémon Go Plus Plus is relatively small, thus making it rather convenient to carry it around with you wherever you go. Let's say you want to take a nap. Well, with the Pokémon Go Plus Plus, it'll be so much easier to do so. And not only that, it's also cross-compatible with Pokémon Go, and hopefully for future Pokémon games as well. But probably not. Unfortunately, it does cost money, like a lot. $50+ is a pretty hefty price, but it's kind of worth it, as it really makes the game a much more pleasant experience, in my opinion. Although, the Pokémon Go Plus Plus can be pretty wonky at times. It's not always the best at tracking my sleep score. There's been countless occasions where I obtain a much lower score, and then there are other days where I obtain a much higher score when, despite the fact I would go to sleep at around the exact same time, and for the most part fall asleep at basically the same amount of time. But of course, outside factors do play a role, as there are times where it does take me longer than usual to fall asleep, or there's a bunch of background noise, such as rain. But even with these factors, it always feels inconsistent at times when it comes to my sleep scores. It is especially frustrating when the Pokémon Go Plus Plus doesn't properly track my sleep, and gives me a much lower score during the last 2 days of a week, which are some of the most important days, as that's when your drowsy power would be at its highest. This would ultimately make it difficult to encounter newer Pokemon and newer sleep styles, all because the Pokemon Go Plus Plus is rather inconsistent at times. But for the most part, it works relatively fine. There's also been times when I would accidentally ruin my current sleep score as I am sleeping, all because I accidentally pressed the middle button, which would end or maybe even mess up my entire sleep progress for that night. This doesn't happen too often, but when it does, it can be rather frustrating. Overall, the Pokemon Go Plus Plus definitely has its benefits, but it isn't perfect by any means. But throughout my time using it for almost an entire year, it has definitely made my experience playing Pokémon Sleep that much better, despite the few occasional hiccups. I want to talk about several good features and mechanics that have been added throughout the game's first year. Now, most of these are relatively small, whereas others are rather huge. But there are definitely amazing features that definitely have made the experience playing Pokémon Sleep that much better. The Daily Gift. Now, this is definitely an amazing addition that they've added to the game, as it's basically a free item every single day. Now, it is random, but I'd rather much take that than no free items daily. And besides, it's pretty difficult to obtain some of these common items you typically obtain from these daily gifts, as your most efficient way in doing so is by completing achievements or missions, or by straight up purchasing them in the Sleep Pass shop or the Diamond shop, which isn't necessarily the best way to obtain these items, or can be rather inconsistent. So to be able to obtain all sorts of these items from the daily gift is definitely an amazing thing. And besides, diamonds. a separate menu for recipes and the necessary ingredients to create such recipes. Now, originally, the only way to access your recipes and the ingredients needed to make them is via the cooking menu, but once you fed Snorlax, you wouldn't be able to access it. So this is definitely a much needed quality of life change. And besides, it is much more easier and quicker to access it. The new map, Lapis Lakeside. Now this is another good feature that they've added to the game, as players could get pretty bored with the original 4 maps. And besides, this new map would give us access to newer Pokemon for us to befriend, or make it easier to befriend existing older Pokemon, and also new music. Creating recipes now grants the whole team with a little bit of energy. This is also an amazing feature, as this originally did not exist. So now whenever we create a dish for Snorlax, our entire team of Pokemon helpers will receive a little bit of energy, up to a max of 5. But I personally feel like at this point it should be increased to something like 10, especially given that certain Pokemon burn through their energy much more quicker than others. And not only that, but on occasions, we end up getting a much lower sleep score than we would like, and this would ultimately not provide much energy to our entire team of Pokemon helpers. So bumping it up to 10 would be a much welcoming change. But I'm definitely thankful that we have it to begin with. A separate menu for candies. Now this is a very minor addition, but it's definitely a good quality of life change, as now it makes it easier for us to decide on what Pokemon we should convert our candies to, instead of having to go through the tedious process of having to go into our Pokemon box and looking at the specific Pokemon and how many candies we have accumulated with them. Countless bug fixes, which is definitely a good thing for the game, as well as countless buffs to existing/older Pokemon. Now I didn't expect them to do such a thing, but it is definitely a much welcoming addition, as even if players don't have these Pokemon, when they eventually do obtain them, they would be automatically buffed and much more usable from the very start. And lastly, countless new Pokemon that have been added throughout the game's first year, which leads me to my next point of discussion. Events. These have been an amazing addition to the game, as it provides all sorts of amazing content, as these events would increase the chances for us to encounter certain Pokemon types, or straight up new Pokemon, ultimately helping with befriending countless Pokemon and encountering new sleep styles for those Pokemon. But even with these increased chances of encountering all of these different Pokemon, they are never truly guaranteed, so you could go these entire events never encountering any of these Pokemon, or maybe even befriending some of these Pokemon, which definitely sucks. But nonetheless, these events are definitely an amazing thing to the game. Now, the best iteration of these events would be the ones where they entirely change the map, both in terms of its appearance and background music, all while introducing a new Pokemon on top of that. For example, the Entei, Raikou, and both the festive Pikachu events. However, more specifically with the Entei and Raikou events, their exchange shops weren't necessarily the greatest, in my opinion, as most of these items costed way too much of the collectible that we needed to obtain throughout the event period. So I hope for the future of these sorts of events, they either reduce the costs of these items or give us more ways to obtain these collectibles needed to make these exchanges. And lastly, these events would provide countless amazing rewards like Dream Shards, Dream Clusters, Poke Biscuits, or Incenses, which would typically be associated and obtainable through these respective missions or the occasional exchange shops. And thankfully, these missions are almost always relatively simple and not too difficult, even for newer players. And on top of that, these events would almost always take place in Green Grass Isles, the first island. So many new players who are first picking up the game would have no difficulty hopping into these events, as they wouldn't need to do any unnecessary grinding to even access these events. So overall, these events have definitely been an amazing addition to the game, and let's hope that stays that way for the years to come. Moving along, I want to talk about another big aspect to the game, the limited time bundles. Now, don't get me wrong, these give out amazing rewards, but in my opinion, there's too many of them, and because of this, it makes diamonds a scarce and rather valuable resource, especially for free-to-play players. And as of right now, there's not too many ways to obtain diamonds for free. The only ways to obtain diamonds for free is the daily stamp card, the daily gift, and the occasional special claimable gifts typically distributed from the developers, usually to celebrate a special occasion like a huge new game update, the 6-month anniversary, or the actual anniversary, or for reaching a certain amount of user downloads, etc, etc, etc. And besides, honestly speaking, the rewards from most of these small and medium bundles aren't really worth purchasing, as most of these items are obtainable through achievements. The daily stamp card, or the daily gift, or even the countless special claimable gifts. Typically, it's the large bundles that have the best rewards, but they are much too expensive that even if you do accumulate enough diamonds to buy one of these large packs, there'll be countless more large bundles with amazing limited time rewards. So, more times or not, honestly speaking, the best ways to spend your diamonds as a free-to-play player is through purchasing the countless upgrades that increase your bag, item, and Pokemon box capacities. Hopefully, in the future, they give us more ways to obtain diamonds for free, or lower the amount of diamonds needed to buy these packs. But more than likely, this won't end up happening at all. Now, something interesting that I do want to point out is the possibility that these special celebrations, like Valentine's, Halloween, the holidays, Pokemon Day, and countless others could bring back these same bundles that we saw the first time they came out. If this does end up being the case, this will allow us to see into the future when it comes to these bundles and what to expect from them, and therefore allow us to determine whether they are worth spending our hard-earned diamonds. Now, the last thing I want to talk about are things I would like Pokémon Sleep to add or change in the near future. Additions and changes that could further enhance and improve the game for the better. First off, Incest Shop. I think this would be an amazing feature if they were to implement it. Now, it's pretty straightforward. A shop where we can buy all sorts of Pokemon incests. These will make it easier to befriend certain Pokemon more often and encounter specific/higher sleep entries for these specific Pokemon. Because I don't know if you know this, but 3 stars are incredibly rare to encounter. Way more than 4 stars. I have no clue why, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And lastly, it would make it much easier to encounter shiny versions of said Pokemon. Overall, I think Incest Shop would be a much needed addition to the game. Or they could just, I don't know, update the Sleep Pass shop. Second off, better daily stamp card rewards. As of right now, the current stamp card rewards never change. No matter what number of stamp cards you've completed throughout your time playing the game. And honestly speaking, the rewards are pretty basic and nothing too crazy or special. And I personally feel like that needs to change sooner rather than later. My suggestion would be that for every 5th and 10th stamp card, they would give special, amazing rewards, like good camp tickets, easy travel tickets, evolution items, diamonds, and so much more goodies. For players who play this game for a long time, I feel like they should be rewarded. And what better way than with every 5th and 10th daily stamp card providing them amazing rewards. A loyal system, if you will. Last but not least, sleep research results, aka these rewards need to improve. They need to increase the amount of Pokemon EXP, candies, Dream Shards, and Research EXP that we obtain as we go through our sleep research results. Because in my opinion, as of right now, it just feels too slow. I only now have about 10 Pokemon at level 30, when in all honesty, I feel like I should have more. I have a lot of Dream Shards, but again, I feel like I should have more. And what better of a way for them to solve this issue is by increasing these rewards. And besides, this will matter much more for newer players, but it will obviously affect and matter for everyone who plays Pokémon Sleep. Goodnight Sleep events are already an amazing addition. And in combination with the recent sleep growth events, these two are a good stepping stone to addressing this issue. Maybe for every week completed The final Snorlax score can give a set amount of Pokemon EXP and candies that could either get distributed between all 5 Pokemon. Maybe the first 3 digits of your final score gives that set amount. For example, you obtain a score of 250,000. So as a result, you would get 250 Pokemon EXP and 125 candies. Or they could divide said score by 5. So that same 250,000 gives 250 EXP, but gets evenly divided into 50 EXP for all 5 Pokemon. I would much prefer the first option, but for players who obtain a score of like 1,000,000 plus every week, that probably would be too good, and the developers would probably not enjoy that all too much. And with all of that, these are 3 things I would like them to add or change to the game in the future. Whether or not we will see that happen, who knows? And with all of that being said, that pretty much concludes my 1 year in review of Pokémon Sleep. I can't wait to see what the game has in store for the future, whether for the better or for the worst. We'll just have to wait and see for ourselves. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for more Pokemon videos like this one, and let me know in the comments below some of your thoughts and opinions about Pokémon Sleep. What do you want to see improve and change for the game? As always, I've been Ozzymon, and I'll catch y'all later. Ozzymon, surfing out.